What up, Downtown Sports? My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, should the Maple Leafs use the $33.5 million line that we saw featured against the Columbus Blue Jackets more often? And if you don't know what line I'm referring to, it is the Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner combination. It was called the quote-unquote all-star line, the $33 million line, the big money line, whatever you want to call it. It was a thing. And when we're looking at this trio here, the second pairing, when they were on the ice, the Maple Leafs controlled the puck a ridiculous amount in that series against a very defensive first team in the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, it was only in 28 minutes, but in those 28 minutes of play, the Toronto Maple Leafs controlled the majority of the shots, the majority of the scoring chances. They were absolutely dominant. They didn't score a whole ton, and that was because Jonas Korpisalo was absolutely just standing on his head the entire series, but that line was super effective. But the problem with putting those three players together is that it caused the Toronto Maple Leafs to form a second line, I guess, of Kasperi Kapanen, William Nylander, and Zach Hyman, and they didn't perform very well together. Now, if we're looking at the fifth combination here, the Maple Leafs have also tried Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander playing together, and that would leave John Tavares to kind of pioneer a second line, and they did have very, very positive results in a limited amount of ice time. And this is not a new idea or a concept of just playing your three best players or your four best players on the same line. The Boston Bruins have been doing it for years with David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, and Brad Marchand. And if we're looking at this armchair GM here, loading up with Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner might not be the greatest idea because then it kind of forces you to play William Nylander at center, and that's been kind of a failed experiment in the past. And just because it hasn't turned out so well so far doesn't mean the idea or the notion of possibly playing William Nylander at center at times is a bad idea. So when the Maple Leafs initially drafted William Nylander, they drafted him as a winger center. There was always the potential that he could do it, but more than likely he would end up on the wing. The same sort of way that Mitch Marner used to be a center in junior, but now he's a winger at the NHL level. But when William Nylander was playing for the Toronto Marlies in the 14-15 season and the 15-16 season, he was almost exclusively playing at the center position. And Kyle Dubas at the time, who was the assistant general manager, was in charge of the Toronto Marlies and oversaw that development. And in the 15-16 season, that's when Sheldon Keefe took over as Toronto Marlies head coach, and they were both on the same page. They were developing this guy to be a centerman. And then William Nylander was called up to the NHL, and Mike Babcock said, no, we're not going to do that, and he shoved him on the wing. And his development at the NHL level was then being overseen by Lou Lamoriello and Mike Babcock, who were the general manager and the head coach at the time. And after Nazem Kadri got suspended in the 2019 playoffs, William Nylander found himself playing center in between Patrick Marleau and Connor Brown, and it wasn't a really fun time for anyone. After Nazem Kadri got suspended in the 2019 playoffs against the Boston Bruins, William Nylander found himself centering a line of Patrick Marleau and Connor Brown. Now, I'm not going to pretend that William Nylander was good at center and Connor Brown and Patrick Marleau were dragging him down because that just wasn't the case. William Nylander wasn't the greatest at center. He was kind of just thrown in there. He hasn't done it in a couple of seasons. But Connor Brown did have just 8 goals and 29 points that season. And if you remember Connor Brown from his final year here in Toronto, not a whole lot happened when the puck was on his stick. And if we're looking at Patrick Marleau's 2018-2019 season, he was really, really cold heading into the playoffs, having just 6 goals and, 17 points in his final 43 games of that season, which is just over a 30-point pace. So in that example, Brown and Marleau were kind of struggling in their own right, and William Nylander was kind of new to the position, not having played it in a couple of seasons. But this was an argument that I made when this was going on, is that it's the coach's job to put people in positions to succeed, and William Nylander was not put in a position to succeed. If you're going to groom this guy as a center, there's going to be growing pains. If you're going to use him as a center, you're going to need to be patient with him, and throwing him in there playing center in the playoffs when he hasn't done it throughout the entire regular season is probably not the best of ideas. But I understand that sometimes your hands are tied and you're forced to do something that you don't really want to do. It's up to the coach to put his players in positions to succeed, and then it's up to the player to actually go out there and perform. Sometimes you can't always have both work out well, but ideally, yeah, you'd like to be on the same page. But I just find it interesting now. Now the general manager of the team is Kyle Dubas and the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs is Sheldon Keefe, the same two guys that oversaw William Nylander's development as a centerman. Is this something that we maybe see the Maple Leafs explore throughout the regular season so that he's comfortable doing it in a playoff atmosphere where they might be in a position to load up and use that all-star line again? Or is this something that if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now? Because it can't be both. They can't just throw him in playing center in a playoff game. That's not fair to him. It's not fair to everyone else. Or if you want to load up one really big line, like we said, we showed it a little bit earlier. They had positive results. They didn't necessarily score a whole ton, but those positive results were there in limited minutes. If you want to load up one line ridiculously, is this a little bit better? And if you're confused as to why Zach Bogosian is in a forward spot here, well, I explained that in a video that I will link above the screen, taking a look at what could be the Leafs' most optimal lines or best lines for this upcoming season. I understand wanting to build depth, and I understand wanting to spread the wealth out and the talent in the lineup so that you have more than just one or two effective lines 5-on-5. But sometimes the situation really does just call for you to load up and just go with it. That's how the Maple Leafs were able to come back and win Game 4 when they were down 3-0 by loading up one line and just going with it. And I spoke about this when touching on Mike Babcock's failures in Game 7s, or even in games where they had an opportunity to close out the series against Boston last year, Game 6 and Game 7. There was a really good example that I used when talking about this in a previous video a long time ago. It was a game between the San Jose Sharks and the Vegas Golden Knights, the game where they had that ridiculous, controversial 5-minute power play. I believe Gerard Gallant threw 5 or 6 forwards over the boards to tie the game in the last minute of the third period. Is it ideal? Is it conventional? No. Did it get the job done? Yes. And this pair, Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe, have been known to try crazier, unconventional ideas so far. So when we're talking about William Nylander playing center on a more regular basis so that you could possibly load up that all-star line again in the playoffs or in a must-win situation, it's not so far-fetched. At one point when Dubas was running the Toronto Marlies and Sheldon Keefe was the head coach there, they had tried a 5-forward power play, which is something that would be seen as crazy, but hey, we've already switched over from the conventional 3-forward, 2-defenseman format to 4 forwards and 1 defenseman. Why not take it one more step further and try that out? It failed miserably, but the point is that they were willing to try it in the first place. And I'm not saying to do this in must-win playoff games. No, I'm saying maybe if you're up by a goal or two, maybe you do it for a period here or a period there, just so that we can get more comfortable and gauge this on a larger sample. Because like I said, if we are to see this $33.5 million line or this all-star line played together ever again, I don't want it to happen under the pretense that William Nylander hasn't played center in months and they're just throwing him into the fire. There might be other line combinations that are better or work just as well, but to have this option in your back pocket is really valuable. And if you can get William Nylander confident and up to speed to playing center sometimes, it's always nice to have the option than not. There's going to be some growing pains if they are going to go down this route, but it could be worth it. That was one of the things that really irked me about Mike Babcock that I think some people have forgotten is that he did not like to try new things. There was a game against the Montreal Canadiens a couple of seasons ago where Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner just found themselves on the ice together for a 5-on-5 shift after a power play, and they scored. One of them scored and the other assisted on the goal, and everyone was so excited to possibly see them play together at 5-on-5 and not just on the power play. And Mike Babcock mulled over it. He would try it for a shift or two here and there and then pull them apart for multiple games at a time. Whether it was or is a bad idea to have Mitch Marner or Austin Matthews playing on the same line together or to do something like this that we've been discussing in this video this whole time, how are you going to tell if it's a bad idea just by looking at it for 30 seconds? That's like me saying I want to learn to play the guitar, picking it up for 30 seconds, playing it, realizing that I sound bad, and then just giving up. And I know sometimes people take things very literally. No, I'm not saying to roll with it even though it's not working for multiple games. No, after 5 or 10 games, you see that this is not working. Obviously, pull it apart, but at least give it that before you make that decision. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments section. I don't really have a strong opinion here if they do the line again or not. Doesn't really matter to me. I think that there's lots of different combinations of lines that the Maple Leafs could throw together that would be effective. But would you like to see the All-Star line or the $33 million line back in action again? What do you think of the idea that Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe were kind of developing William Nylander at center in the American Hockey League, and then when he got up to the NHL was never really given that opportunity again? Let me know down in the comment section, and make sure to leave me a like on the video if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, don't take things so literally.